On the Suffering of the World by Arthur Schopenhauer. This guy, he must have been an old man when he wrote this book, because he's not holding back on his dire and pessimistic views on the human condition. Let's go. Hi and welcome to the Booklab. I'm Bjorn, and this is the place where we bring you the best book recommendations when it comes to philosophy, psychology, human nature and human potential. And today we're talking about On the Suffering of the World by Arthur Schopenhauer. First off, Schopenhauer makes it very clear that when it comes to life, its main characteristic is suffering. He compares the distribution between pleasure and pain with an animal being eaten and the animal eating it. Quote, "A quick test of the assertion that enjoyment outweigh pain in this world, or that they are at any rate balanced, would be to compare the feelings of an animal engaged in eating another with those of the animal being eaten." And it's quite easy to sympathize with this view once you give the experience of existence some thought. For instance, as I wrote down the notes in preparation for this video, I was tucked down under a cozy cover next to my beautiful daughter, and we all live in a spacious and heated dwelling. There's nothing in the world that I actually could complain about, and everything is quite pleasurable, right? But where lies my focus? On the small itch on the side of my nose. And this is exactly Schopenhauer's point. Suffering, pain and frustration tends to take the center stage in life, and it's only when we make a conscious effort that we actually appreciate the joys and the pleasures of existence. So what Schopenhauer suggests is kind of a switch in mindset from how we usually think about things. And he says that we should maybe look at life as a penal colony, a kind of a hell on earth. Quote, "As a reliable compass for orienting yourself in life, nothing is more useful than to accustom yourself to regarding this world as a place of atonement, a sort of penal colony. When you have done this, you will order your expectations of life according to the nature of things, and no longer find calamities, sufferings, torments and miseries in life as something irregular and not to be expected, but will find them entirely in order, well knowing that each of us is here being punished for his existence and each in his own particular way." End quote. And Schopenhauer suggests maybe it would be better to call people, instead of sir or monsieur, maybe philosopher would be a more appropriate way to greet people. This greeting would help us see our fellow humans in society in a more true light and, quote, "remind us of the most necessary of all things: tolerance, patience, forbearance, and charity." And the philosopher also gives some great tips for all of us book nerds. Quote, "As the biggest library, if it is in disorder, is not as useful as the small but well-arranged one. So you may accumulate a vast amount of knowledge, but it will be far less valuable to you than a much smaller amount if you have not thought it over yourself. Because only through ordering what you know, by comparing every truth with every other truth, can you take complete possession of your knowledge and get it into your power. The surest way to never have any thoughts of your own is to pick up a book every time you have free time. Reading is merely a surrogate for thinking for yourself. It means letting someone else direct your thoughts. You should only read when your own thoughts dry up, which will of course happen frequently enough even to the best heads." End quote. While most of this book is packed with fantastic aphorisms and insightful thoughts on the human condition, the chapter on women stands out. A lot of things recently have been added to the category of misogyny, but I mean, Schopenhauer's ideas on women are upright nasty. Quote, Women are suited to being the nurses and teachers of our earliest childhood precisely because they themselves are childish, silly and short-sighted. In a word, big children. Their whole life long, a kind of an intermediate stage between child and the man who is the actual human being, man. I haven't read any biographies on Schopenhauer yet, but I think this chapter says more about Schopenhauer and his luck with the ladies, so to speak, rather than it's an actual evaluation what the status and accomplishment of a lady at that time actually was. I was actually pretty hesitant to quote that because it could be taken out of context and yeah, it would be a shitstorm. The book, it held my attention. It's a bit unfocused because the chapters deal with so many different topics. I mean, on the suffering of the world, on the vanity of existence, on the indestructibility of our essential being by death, on affirmations and denial of the will to live, on suicide, on women, on thinking for yourself, on aesthetics, on philosophy and the intellect. But what strikes me with this book is how piercing and straightforward most of his arguments are, and I find myself seeing suffering everywhere after reading this book. I think it's a short book, so it might be a good starting point if you're interested in learning more about Schopenhauer's pessimistic but often quite sober view on things, maybe not on women. That chapter got me to laugh more than anything else. And I mean, it's quite short book. I mean, it's 125 pages. If you're interested in Schopenhauer and don't want to commit to his big work, The World as Will and Representation, I think was the name of that one, then this is an obvious choice. It's a lower commitment. I actually got into Schopenhauer because I started to read this book, I Am Dynamite by Sue, something French. And this book talks about how in the early days Nietzsche and Wagner, they were best buddies back in the day and they were geeking out on Schopenhauer's philosophy. So I thought, okay, while I'm reading this book, I might take a break and actually see what this Schopenhauer guy was about. And I'm super happy I did. On the suffering of the world, the parts about, there are some chapters that are just mind-blowing that I will go back to. There are some that are more forgettable. Great starting point for Arthur Schopenhauer. And after you smash that subscribe button, because it really helps me reach more people, then maybe suggest a good starting point for Kant. I think Kant is the next philosopher that I want to explore. Please comment below, share your philosophy recommendations. We need more philosophy books in our lives. See you next Thursday for more book reviews. Until then, Bjorn out.